Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here. Glad to have you along as well. Today is August 18th. It's Friday, and Friday is the Healing Circle. So today's program is going to be one that continues our work in the Healing Circle, talking about our mental health, our body health, our community health, all things healthy. Today's show is special because we're talking about a particular area of great importance, and that is awareness about the signs and symptoms of postpartum depression in Black women. It's going to be a good conversation. Before we begin, let me acknowledge that we are appreciative of being in partnership with the Minnesota Department of Health, and they join us in encouraging all of us to stay aware, to remember that COVID, the pandemic is over, but the dangers still exist. So we want you all to be safe and practice the protocols. Just be aware. Simple things like, washing hands, staying aware, prioritizing prevention. The idea is that together we can create awareness, we can encourage testing and help everybody stay healthy. So with that, enjoy the show. Remember, be well, stay healthy. Well, let me begin by inviting my esteemed colleague and co-host, Dr. Bravada Garrett-Akinsanya. Dr. B, so good to see you as always. How are you? And welcome again.
I'm happy to be here, Brother Al.
And go ahead.
Really grateful for having another day and having an opportunity to celebrate and acknowledge our heritage and our cultural ways of knowing and healing. And as we introduce the Healing Circle today, I just want people to understand that we do this, we convene this circle because in African culture, we want everybody to have an equal access to power. So a circle has no beginning or end, and everybody in the circle has equal access to the space, which is the center, where we have voice, where we hold our spirits, and we hold the information that we share amongst each other. In the circle, we honor our elders, and we honor them because they're the shoulders that we stand on. We honor our elders because they're closest to our ancestors, and we think of their sacrifices and gifts, and we honor our ancestors because, of course, they're closest to our Creator. What we also honor is the idea that we share information, the idea that we share information, and the idea that we support one another by honoring order. So in the talking circle, in this healing circle, we share a virtual talking stick. And although we're not physically in a circle, we use that stick, and people can ask for the stick or they can see the stick in any way they like. But right now, the way we work is we pass the stick one to another. So welcoming people today to our Healing Circle program, where we talk about maternal mental health and what we can do as an African-American community to address the issue that 44% of the women who die in childbirth are Black women, and that our babies are 4 times more likely to also die in childbirth if we do not do something differently, if we don't go back to caring for ourselves, our bodies, our babies, our moms, like we used to, if we don't do a better job of being vigilant with providers, we have an outcome that won't continue to support our regeneration. So with that in mind, I pass the stick back to our moderator extraordinaire, Baba Al. So here's the talking stick back to you.
Thank you, Dr. B. Well, I'm going to take the role of a journalist and questioner and listener and student here, as I recognize I'm in the presence of greatness, of excellence, and of information that is extraordinary. And so I want to pass the talking stick back to you, Dr. B, and have you bring in our guests and colleagues for today. And let's get this conversation going. I've got a bunch of questions, but my job is sort of to be the punctuation and the question mark to keep the information flowing. So I'm passing the talking stick back to you to take us down this road.
Okay, well, I'd like to first introduce our panelists. We will have psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner Shirlynn M. LaChapelle. We also have as our guest speaker telling of her lived experience and her work in the labor of her spirit. I would say she's a poet. She's a sister of the universe, of the world. Her name is Naomi Gaines Young. She brings the spirit into her power in loving hip hop and making sure that we understand the values of our community. So these two sisters, I'd like to bring them on to start out. And Naomi, if we could just hear from you first, sister, in terms of what you're doing now and what your story is in terms of being a Black mother experiencing maternal mental health challenges. So I give you the talking stick, my queen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Bravada, and thank you so much, Al, for having me on the show. This was a tremendous opportunity, and it's just a privilege to share with you my experience with mental health, maternal mental health, postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and the eventuality that I fear a lot of people may have if we don't broach the subject or dive deep or start having a dialogue and conversations about mental wellness, especially specifically to Black women and Black mothers. I am a hip hop artist, an author, owner and operator of Love Must Be Entertainment, motivational hip hop lessons in media, in which I use my art as a sounding board, as a platform, as a way to get my voice out, which otherwise might not be possible to reach the demographic that I intend to reach. So I'm just happy to be here. And as we go along, sharing more of my story, and just thank you both.
So now I'd like to pass the talking stick to Nurse Shirlynn LaChapelle. Sorry, Shirlynn.
That's okay. Allergies. Hello, everyone. This is an important topic. It's a very serious topic. Sorry, you can see my kitchen. Very serious topic. So many women who are pregnant are in danger. I'll just say it like that. Not because anyone means for them to be in danger, but because of all of the, I'm going to say, comorbidities that we have, all related to the stress that's in our life, from dealing 24/7 with the systemic racism that we deal with. Now, that does not include whether you have high blood pressure, diabetes, sickle cell anemia, or any of the other diseases. The stress alone is enough to be detrimental to the infant or the baby and the mother. So much so that many babies who are under this kind of prolonged stress are born prematurely. Their mothers can sometimes suffer complications. And then, of course, we know with all of this are the mental health issues that go along with this throughout the pregnancy and after. And it's not always, oh my God, I've got my baby. Oh, I'm so happy. It might be, I don't know who this baby is. It's crying all the time. I can't take it. I can't do it. I need help. So with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. B.
Unmute.
There I go, trying to mute myself. What I'd like to say is that this topic is one that holds pain and hope. The pain is that for us as Black women and the Black men who love us, our partners, whoever they are, the pain is that many of us go through pregnancies alone. And if we have comorbid or concurrently existing problems, such as a mental health diagnosis or a chemical abuse situation, we often don't ask for help because we have this legacy of being strong Black women. And we need to recognize that our strength and our skills are also wrapped in our ability to seek support. So I think the story of Sister Poet Laureate Naomi Gaines Young is a story to hear, because out of that pain grew a powerful Black woman who shares hope and wellness to others. And I would like to take a moment just to thank her once again for sharing her story with us so graciously and honestly. And I'll pass the talking stick to welcoming NG Young in the house. Hip hop.
Thank you so much. So my story, I like to begin at the point of the beginning of the end for me. I moved here from Chicago, Illinois, when he was just 1. I relocated here because I wanted the opportunities, first of all, to save my son's life, because I knew if he grew up in Chicago, he might not make it, considering how violent, the gun violence, it's much worse than it was when I left. So I'm confident that I made the right decision, and he's still alive today. And so I was a teen mom at the time, and I moved here in 1997 after graduating from high school. And I wanted to go to college. My mom was here. She said, well, just move here. I can watch the baby. They got many programs. They'll help you. There's jobs on every corner. You can really do well here. And I came here and did just that. I hooked up with Wilder Foundation. They had a program called the Roof Project. And the Roof Project, Rebuilding Our Own Futures was the acronym. And they helped me find housing and support and resources. And I hit the ground running. I ended up going to school. I ended up being a preschool teacher at my son's school. And so he went to work with me during the day, and he also came along with me in the evening and went to college. He went to the college daycare, and I was going to night school, and I was cruising. Then I decided I had a background in music in Chicago. I had a singing group, and we used to sing a cappella on the subway platforms because the acoustics was great. We would get on the train during rush hour, and we would just harmonize and just sing, and people were loving us, and we knew we were good, right? And when I got pregnant, that kind of ended, and I had to take the responsibility of raising my child and finishing school, which I did. And I relocated here, as I said, and hit the ground running. I started to get back in music again and ended up meeting a young gifted MC who eventually became the father of my twins. And he was a practicing Muslim. And by being with him, I decided to try to live that lifestyle. Then 9/11 happened. The day after 9/11, at the time of 9/11, I was working as a medical clerk at a clinic. And everybody was watching the footage on the TV. And then the next day, when it was reported that suspected Islamic terrorists had did this, I was treated so poorly, because obviously my attire identified me as someone practicing Islam. And so I left the job there in tears. I never came back, and I never worked again before I went to prison. So at the time, I didn't know I was pregnant during 9/11, and or I would be soon getting pregnant after that. And I already had a history of depression. So in retrospect, I was more likely to suffer postpartum or some difficulties, postpartum psychosis, or any other variation of that. And when 9/11 happened, that was like a downward spiral for me. I began to fear not only for my life, but the life of my twin sons. And I started trying to rationale my fear or try to take it away. And so I would put my TV on 24-hour news channels, just watching for some glimpse, some hope that things weren't as bad as I had perceived them in my mind. And they were actually worse. I started watching reports on Guantanamo Bay. I started friends who were Muslim women who had school-age children were telling me they're taking their kids out of school. The kids are coming home beat up, saying they're terrorists, and and so this was an environment of very much spiritual, social, and political hostility. And with that, and with already the crippling diagnoses that I had prior to giving birth, it quadrupled after that. So then I started to read conspiracy books. One book I came across was Behold the Pale Horse. And on page, I think it's 165 in this book. First of all, the book was written by William C. Cooper, who was a former U.S. Naval Intelligence officer for the government. And this was like his tell-all book of all the government conspiracies and secret aliens, secret societies, presidents, all this. But one particular part in this book talked about a program that was designed to deal with overpopulation of minorities, and also using, this is what the book said. He said that the LGBT community would be used in order to diminish, to attract, they would promote LGBT lifestyles and put them up on a pedestal and have everybody attracted to it in order to decrease the population. However, he said the LGBT community was being used and as a mechanism to that. And then as soon as they achieved their purpose, that the LGBT community, along with population of minorities and other undesirables, would be exterminated. The name of this program was called MK Naomi. Plain as day in this book. So when a person is experiencing psychosis, at least when I did, this is a common symptom. They try to find evidence to support their delusion or support the fact that they're seeing and experiencing things that maybe everybody else is not aware of or keen to. So that was like the smoking gun for me. And so I began to realize that not only was I, as a Black woman with Black male children, was a target, against, for white supremacy. And not only that, but because of this program, MK Naomi, and I took it as MK as must kill Naomi. And so I began to fear from my life of me and my children. So much like women did during slavery, this is an often undiscussed topic. When they gave birth to children, they would end their lives rather than having them go through what they go through during slavery. Especially this happened more with female children because they were subject to much more abuse, not just physical, but sexual. Rape was just, that's the way it was. It wasn't even called rape. And so through these circumstances, through the environment, through these perceived fears, whether real or imagined, I saw a reflection of that in my world, and my world didn't feel safe. So rather than believing at the time that the government was after me, the government was after my children, and all of that, that it would be more merciful for me to end our lives than to wait for the eventuality of the torture, brutality, and murder, and have it be excused because we were practicing Muslims. My children had Muslim names. Their dad named them Supreme Knowledge Allah, Sincere Understanding Allah. So in their very names showed that they were affiliated with Islam. So I began to fear for their lives. So in that fear, on July 4th, I drove to the Taste of Minnesota. At the time, it was on the Wabasha Street Bridge. And I went there and pulled the stroller to the side of the bridge and grabbed my twin sons, who were 14 months old at the time, and threw them over. And I also jumped. The plan was to just die, but to not die in silence, not to die, where people wouldn't see me or them. And I wanted people to know that we didn't die because someone snuck and kill us, or be killed and people not know about it. So this was my way out. This is my way out of suffering. This was my children's way out of, which is the eventuality of being targeted because they're male children, because they're Islam, because all of these things. And in some way, I felt like at the time that I was doing the right thing, the only thing that I knew to do at the time. So subsequently, I was sentenced to 19 years in prison. I served 12 and a half in Shakopee, and then 2.5 in St. Peter State Hospital for being released, of a total time of 15 years incarcerated. When I got out, I decided to not be quiet. I decided to, I don't want anybody going through what I went through. And if you rewind that tape, I went through it because there was virtually no education for me or my family about mental health issues. I had 12 hospitalizations. I had 21 911 calls to my house. People knew this does not happen out of the blue. There were very much warning signs, but I believe because who I was, what I am, Black woman, a Muslim woman at the time. My children were Black. They were, their dad was Muslim. So people say you fell through the cracks. No, I fell through a big hole in the side of in the sidewalk, and everybody saw me walking towards it, including my family. People often think, oh, she was just tired. I know I had plenty of help. Their dad was in their lives. My family basically moved in with me to help. So I wasn't lacking and stressed out and just tired of my kids. I really felt like I was doing the right thing to save their lives, to save my life. And they may not make sense, but again, when someone's experiencing delusions, when someone's experiencing mental health symptoms, the very thing they need to process information is damaged, which is my brain, my mind.
Thank you, sister, for that very powerful and compelling story. And the courage to share it so that you can help us heal. I'm wondering what Sister Shirlynn might want to add or have questions for Sister Naomi.
Sister Naomi, I just want to thank you. My heart goes out to you. As a person who has suffered with depression for several years before I got proper treatment, I totally understand what you were going through. Well, I wasn't looking at any conspiracy theories or anything like that. My life was falling apart around me, my marriage. Two of my sons were acting out because of the effect of what was going on. And, the longer you go depressed, the worse the depression gets. And then thoughts of suicide, they don't become crazy anymore. They become a way out. They become a means to an end so that you don't have to suffer anymore. As a person who made it through all that, I look at you and I say, yeah, everybody was around me. I was a nurse at the hospital, ICU. Nobody would have ever thought that I would try something like that because I was strong. I was taking care of everybody all around me,
exactly,
just as you were. So yes, I understand you, and my heart breaks for you that you didn't have the support you needed, that no one saw, that all those people there. The part that really upsets me the most is your visits to the hospital through the mental health system. At what point did they just not listen to what you were saying and see your desperation and listen to the words you were using, which were basically screaming that I just don't want to be here anymore. I want my kids to be safe. We are not safe here. How did that get past them? I don't know. I'm going to turn the talking stick back to Dr. B.
Thank you, Sister Shirlynn. What we know in mental health is that the Surgeon General had commissioned a study when it was David Satcher, and he did a study where he looked at who used mental health services. And what he found was that African Americans, we wait until we get to the end. I mean, we're in dire straits before we reach out to try to get mental health support. And then he said that when we do come to get help, we've waited the longest, and then we get the least appropriate care. Mm-hmm. So what happens to us is the evidence-based practices, they don't have evidence for it for us. The practices, even the good practices, they choose to make discretionary decisions not to give those treatments to us. And so our Black lives actually have not mattered for many, many years in the mental health system. It's only recently, actually after that brother did that study, when he came out and said culture counts, that people finally began to think about the influence of culture on mental health, the influence of how they make implicit bias decisions about what we are and who we should be. So when I think about Sister Naomi's story, her story, sadly, is not as much of an exception as it should be. And so we have too many Black women who don't get the care they need. Their families aren't educated to see the signs, although from what she's described to us, they were blatant and flashing, and what that means when you have a mental health challenge in terms of your life and your health. So I want to ask Sister Naomi again, so a couple of more questions. And one of them is, what do you think could have been done differently in the mental health system, Sister, when you were presenting and your delusions were growing? What do you think they could have done to support you? I'll give you the talking stick.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I did a little research because this confirmed my lived experience as well. Only about 98% of all therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists in the U.S. are non-Black. That may not seem like much, but when you're going and talking about, like when I was going to the doctor, hey, I'm really not feeling safe. I'm a practicing Muslim, and it's a lot of racism that I'm experiencing. And I'm talking about these things. And what I found is I was doing one or two things. I was either educating my therapist on the reality of what it is to be African American in this country, which most of them have no lived experience or cultural requirements to get their degree. And if they do, they're minimum at best. So one thing, having someone on the other side of the couch, so to speak, that looks like me and can relate to me, and I didn't have to bring them up to speed on what it's like to be African American living in this country. So that's one thing. Culturally competent care is very much lacking, and it still is. And I continue to struggle. I had continued after the incident to struggle to be with a therapist who understood and who would listen to my story in a way that doesn't feel like they're being attacked and their own cognitive dissonance comes up. So first of all, having some culturally competent care. Second of all, educating my family, letting them know or come to some sessions or having some kind of group to say, hey, your loved one is experiencing this. This is what this will look like when they're going through this. Maybe you guys can come up with a care plan when she's stable in between her trips, and then talk about her what they can do the next time that this happens and how y'all can kind of solve this and work it out amongst yourselves. And if it doesn't work, then reach out to us. None of that was done. And on top of that, when I'm not listened to about my issues, and then you just shove medication at me, I'm not going to want that. Hey, we ain't even got the whole psychotherapy, we not even connecting on what I need first. Just, talking to me, therapy-wise, support-wise. Now you want to shove medications in my face. and you're not even listening to me. So I was kind of alienated from the idea of taking medications. And then that further led to even more psychotic delusions. Medicines is poison. They just want this to stare. It was a lot of things going through my head, which seemed to confirm whatever my mental health delusions or psychosis was telling me. But how much of it really was psychosis? How much of it really was practical things from one human being to another, from one doctor to a patient, that could have been solved earlier? Getting around HIPAA is the next thing. HIPAA prevented my family from knowing what was going on with my care those times I went to the hospital. If my family knew that all they did just have me paint and color and sing songs and not really do any kind of therapy, just kind of housed me there, fed me there, and really didn't do, I met with doctors a few times, but not really. If they would have knew what was going on when I went to the hospital, I think that would have mattered too. But because of HIPAA, the doctors couldn't share. So we had to learn how to navigate through all these things. So those are the things I can start with that could have been done different. You're muted, Al.
Thank you. Yeah. Let me jump in and just say thank you for that powerful story, the testimony, the sharing that you are doing. And thank you, because you've been here before, so it's so good to see you again. I'm inspired by you and inspired by your courage, and I'm hopeful and grateful, and like I say, admire the resilience and the healing that you seek and that you represent. And so I want to do a couple of things. You can always, I'm just a journalist, I'm just a reporter. My job is to ask questions. You can always tell me, Al, no. Okay. But I want to know what happened with your family, your children. Tell me what you want to tell me about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Well, when I went to prison, my oldest two children, who were with my ex-husband, went with him. Well, actually, they were with him because he's from Chicago, and he would come get them during the summer and take them to Chicago and with their grandparents, and they would stay up there the summer. So my two oldest children were not in Minnesota when that happened. They were with their father out of town. So the twin, Sincere Understanding, unfortunately died. He was drowned. A man jumped in to save me and my son, and I'm eternally grateful for him. And that in and of itself is a very deep story, meeting him and all that stuff. But my children, because their father was out of town and really not in a position to take them, they end up going with my sister. So my sister, at 21 years old, she was living in a studio apartment downtown St. Paul. She was in school, and the kids were going to go to the system because they couldn't be with their father any longer. She took my kids immediately and raised them as her own, but knowing that I was their mom. My daughter was 2 at the time, and my son was 7. And so she took them. And then the surviving twin was raised by his biological father, the Muslim man who was, there and involved. And so he was raised by him. But they, my son's father and my sister, always had the kids together. They grew up. They were visiting me at the prison. I couldn't see the little one until I didn't meet him again until he was 17, because they were saying he's my victim and I'm not allowed to see him. And so I couldn't visit with him none of the time I was in prison. And it was only after I got out and I guess proved that I was okay that they allowed me to see him when he was 17. And now we have a wonderful relationship. He's over here spending a weekend with me a lot. He's in Job Corps right now. He's 21. And my daughter is 22, and my oldest son, is 26. So we have an amazing relationship. My family has never stopped supporting me. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have made it through these 15 years. If it wasn't for them, my children wouldn't know who I am and know the reality of the story of what happened, and that it wasn't about me not loving them. It's just that mom was sick. And so understanding that and really educating, really healing as a family and bringing everybody together is really, 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 in my spirituality, my relationship with God, and it's really what brought me full circle.
And so the question is, Sister Naomi, was prison the answer? And who was it the answer for? Was it the answer for you? The answer for it hurts me that you described the scenario where the system said your child was your victim. Just you saying that hurts me.
That's the words they use.
Yeah,
That's the words that they used. And
and was there an advocacy anywhere that said we got to do something different? Why did the community or the society default to a process that locked you up for 15 years? Were there other choices? Were there other options?
Absolutely. I could have been found not guilty by reason of mental illness. I was not. You have to, when I look at it back in retrospect, I look at the political and social climate at the time that happened. 2003, 9/11 just happened. Everybody's up in war. Everybody's war hungry, bloodthirsty, very little patience, very little compassion, very little empathy. It was a lot of xenophobia and accepted racism at the time. And even Black people got on that train waving flags. And it was just, if you remember what it was like back then, and then here, and even my lawyer, God bless his soul, said, if you were a white girl from Shoreview, you would not be going to prison. I'm telling you that as a white man in this system, as your lawyer, you would not be going to prison. And in fact, after the incident, I was taken to the jail immediately. First of all, the jail used to be right off the Mississippi River, facing the very bridge that I jumped off of. And they put me in a room facing that bridge and the river. And the old jail was not like the new jail where it's a little sliver and it's an opaque or a little translucent window where you can only make out light. This was a clear picture window, clear, crystal clear. And they put me in the room facing there. And there was just a lot of things that they did I got beat up in the jail by 2 guards. They snatched my dreads out. It was a lot of things that they did, but the one thing that they really did was the white woman it was a couple years later. It was a couple years before my incident. I was at St. Peter Hospital, and one of the teachers there, I had just got there, and he was like, well, it's a lady here that 4 years ago, she drove her car into a lake in Minnesota. Her sons were in the back seat, and she got out the car and just let it drive into the lake. One of her sons died. The other one was a vegetable due to brain damage. And the judge said she was not on her meds, and we're just going to get you treatment and help. She spent 4 years at St. Peter, and she got out. So St. Peter being a hospital. He was like, why aren't they doing the same thing for you? And again, you understand, I'm a Black woman from Chicago. Here's this dark-skinned Black woman ruining our 4th of July. How dare she? After 9/11, if she doesn't, this Muslim anti-American woman, which I wasn't, ruined our holiday, and she's going to pay for that. So that's what it was about.
Janine Lukes is watching, and she said, Ms. Young, you are extraordinary. I so appreciate your willingness to tell your stories so that we can learn. And Janine, thank you for that comment. Like, share, let everybody else know we're having this conversation right now. It's an important conversation. And so, let me see what she says. She says, I'm working with the Department of Human Services African American Child Well-Being Council focused on racial disparities. She says, sadly, I recalled your event, and in understanding there's always more to your story. And she's asking, would you be willing to share your story with the council? So
Absolutely. I
we'll
have a
make that finish.
presentation, a PowerPoint that I do telling my story.
Uh-huh.
I've done it many, many times from beginning to end, highlighting everything. And I would be more than happy to do that. Absolutely. Because my goal, and even though these harsh things happened to me, I couldn't have this hatred in my heart for what happened. It would destroy me.
Mm-hmm.
It would literally eat me up. And it's not excusing nothing wrong that happened to me, but I really think I'd rather err on the side of using my story to enlighten, educate, so this doesn't happen again. So we can get some changes to the McNaughton Law in Minnesota, which was written in 1839 and has not been amended or updated to meet with modern day sciences of what we know about the mind and mental health. That needs to change. If that law wasn't as stringent and has such a high standard, because it's so old, it was written when people were driving horses and buggies. And what we know about modern day mental health illnesses and sciences of the mind, this law needs to be updated to match with those recently learned sciences. And so that is one thing that can change. But yes, it's definitely work for me to do. And I look at it like educating. I'd rather err on that side than err on the side of being angry, hateful, vengeful, or because that's going to destroy me. And those who hear this story, the evidence is going to be there. The proof is there. I don't need to lie or hide anything. All you got to do is well documented what happened to me. The hospitalizations, the 911 calls to the house, the reports by the police, the testimony by my neighbors, even the testimony of my son's father, the twins' father. They were thinking they were going to use him to say something bad about me. And he was like, she's a great mom. This is shocking. I never thought she would do anything, even though he was young and we weren't together, but he had nothing to say about my mothering skills prior to getting sick. Nothing bad at all.
So let me talk about, or ask you about healing, and describe, if you would, your healing process. How does healing, what is healing for you, and how is healing occurring in your life? And I say that because you're speaking out of a place of healing, and you're also speaking as a healer. I believe that's how I'm perceiving and receiving your presence and your voice and your thought and your spirit. But talk about what the concept and notion, the feeling of healing means to you.
Yeah. I guess I have a lot of mercy for people who are ignorant. And what I mean by that is an easy fix. We can fix ignorant. Ignorant means just to not know, not be aware. And looking through that lens of who's truly just ignorant and people who are malicious at heart. And it's being very careful by who we say that is, because I cannot judge your heart. I can judge what you say, what you do, but I cannot judge your heart, because everybody thinks they're the good guy. The prosecutors that prosecute think they were doing the right thing. The people who were like, you should send a, think they were doing the right thing. And what I think is a lack of compassion and empathy creates a certain type of person. And they not only do that with me or my story, they do that with every piece of information that crosses their path. And in some way, I kind of feel sorry for them, because it's like, you will never know anything beyond what you see with your own two eyes. That is a horrible existence for someone that only depends on the physical. And that is also, if you only depend on the physical, then your happiness or your well-being or your quality of life is subject to changing by all the changes that happen in the physical. But I believe if you base your joy in your spirit and ground it on the intangible, which for me was the spiritual, you can sway with the wind like a tree that blows in the storm. You can, because you've planted on something solid. But if you plant it on what's going on in the physical, then you will always be subject to being moved and blown around and knocked off your square because you're not planted on something that's solid. And so in that way, I look for opportunities to teach. I look for opportunities to express. And my music also gives me that. Music and hip hop is what really, really brought me full circle, because my creativity and expressing myself through song, art, poetry, literature, my book, my art, it really empowers me, if you will, to have the courage to tell this story. And plus I'm good. So so those things being a foundation, my family being a foundation, my husband being a foundation, my children who love and adore me, and we are moving forward. We're not all sad and no, we're blessed because we're all together again, and now we're stronger. And I really feel like I'm bulletproof because no one can say anything about me that hasn't already been said. Nothing, I've heard it all. Any insults people want to throw or judges, anything, but be careful, because you don't know who protects me in the spirit world. And I just say that with full confidence.
I want to hear your music. I want to hear some of your rhymes, some of your work. Are you prepared to throw something down right now?
Yeah.
Go ahead. You got the microphone. You got the talking stick. Go ahead and do something.
So this is a song called He Knows. And I'm just going to do the second verse because it's more potent. This is telling my story about my journey, and something I also left out that I hope we can touch on after this verse, but it's called He Knows. It's funny sometimes how life just turns around. Who you judge when you're up becomes you when you're down. Back in 98, I was watching TV. A mother of 6 next saw her babies, condemned and said it could never be me, but never came for me. July 4th, 2003 became the very thing that I said I never be. Now I understand it is deceased. When I came to prison, guess who held out their hand? Guess who said, if you need someone, I'm a friend. Guess who understands what no perfect mom will? The same mom back in 98, I condemn her, my friend. And so that verse is describing back in 98, I was living in McDonough Projects in St. Paul. And I was sitting with my mom, and I was pregnant at the time. And a woman's story came on by the name of Kua Her. And she was a Hmong woman, immigrated to this country from Laos. And she ended up ending the lives of her 6 children. And when her story came on, I judged her very harshly. But my mom checked me. She was sitting next to me. She said, don't do that, baby. You don't know what that woman going through. And lo and behold, 5 years from that, I ended up doing the very same thing I judged this woman for. Then I ended up in prison right next to her, where she come and say, hey, I heard about your story. If you need somebody to talk to, I'm here. So I've had many aha and moments like this, not of just morbid things like that, but very like full circle. Like I'm here. I'm the universe has me. Like God is guiding my steps. I'm not alone. An invisible force is with me that want to see me make it. And only way an invisible force can really, really get to use you, it has to break you down. So you're dependent on nothing but it. Take all those beings and people that don't mean you no harm out your life. Prison did that, showing me who was really for me, who was really love me, and who really cares. Now you start building up a spiritual foundation, a spiritual tower in your spirit, in your being, in your environment. And to me, that makes me bulletproof. Even if something happens to me, I'm going home. And I know I will not feel ashamed in my God's presence. So I just feel like that's what I can say. And
I'm loving it.
Kua, and I say her, my friend, because Kua Her, Her is her name. And she's a beautiful woman, a beautiful spirit, a beautiful individual. And she had 30 years they sentenced her to. And she's coming up to be released really soon. And coming full circle with this beautiful woman and talking to her and having her tell me her story, and us talking about both of us living in McDonough. She was literally doors down from me when this happened. A lot of people say McDonough Homes was built on an old cemetery. I don't know how true that is. Maybe that was just somebody throwing something around, but it is something that was going on with me and this woman around the same time.
And in that place.
And
Yes.
in that place.
And
And
there was a play written that about you and about your children and about your incident and about the spirit around all of that experience that you had unfolded. And so interesting to have that. So Dr. B, as Sister Naomi was talking, I just stepped back and looked at the macro again. Hers is specific, but it reminded me of, and she said this, when there's, for example, a shooting at Edina Public School, or fire, or or one of the mass shootings anywhere in the country, everything mobilizes to look at the mental health, the impact, the trauma that these white kids are feeling. But you and I know that kids in our neighborhood are subject to experience, walk by, maybe the unintended victims of gunshots all the time, violence all the time. And even numbers of children are sometimes impacted if things occur in or about a school. And the question is, do we afford our people the same care, love, attention for the trauma that we experience because things happen? And my sense is, Sister Young, as you said, a white person, a situation, a mental health issue, she gets hospitalized 4 years. Same situation with you, variation on a theme. You're in prison for 15 years, right? And so where is that, Dr. B? What does it say about our society, that how it responds to us and our humanity and the condition that it places us in that brings this stress and this reaction? Dr. B, what do you think?
Well, it definitely is the psychology of prejudice. And what we know about that is that when they see our Black skins, they associate us with criminality. They associate us with less than it, less intelligence, and they don't spend a lot of energy trying to support us because they don't see our lives as valuable. So when we work to train white providers, we have to increase their awareness of their role and their white-bodied sense of superiority. And we have to teach them that we are not equally inferior as they are superior. And one of the things I think I wanted to say about Naomi's words, her music, is that she steps into courage. And so when we as Black providers get trained by white providers, we can replicate the same injury. So I was talking to my staff this morning about how do we claim our Blackness in our clinical work? How do we give our sisters and brothers the skills that they need to overcome dealing with an environment that says you shouldn't exist and we don't give a dang if you do or not? And so one of the things I think I loved about her story is that I think she would say that we need to go to counseling and get support there, learn new skills, get people to walk us down from the ledge. But she'd also say that if you get a good Black therapist, what will happen is that work will support your innate gifts, your internal genius, and lift that up so you can realize not only do you have you have what God gave you gifts and talents of survival, and thriving and moving forward and not going that path alone. That when we move, we're a collective. I am because we are, and we are because I am. So our belief of that central connection with one another means that that's my sister or that's my brother. And in my spirit, when people have struggles with depression or any kind of disorder, but mostly postpartum depression, people think they're just tired. And sometimes women will say, I'm just tired. But the tired gets to a point of what we would call, if we providers, compassion fatigue. You get tired of so much effort and care because you get broken down. You forget that life has a greater meaning for you, and you're isolated with you, that baby, and people around you, not even noticing your pain. So we have to be a people who learns how to say ouch and ouch real loud. And we have to teach our community, our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our fathers, our children, our pastors, our friends. We need to teach them how to hear us say ouch and to help us work through it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Sister Naomi, final words, any other thoughts?
I just want to say that I am a person who's all about educating and getting the word out there. So if you ever want me to come and present to your group, reach out to my website, lovemustbeentertainment.com. That's one word, one sentence, lovemustbeentertainment.com. Follow me on YouTube, listen to my music, my lectures. I have commentary on there if you want to get to know what goes on in this head a little better, if you dare. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Al, for having me here. Thank you, Shirlynn, for being here. Thank you, Dr. Bravada, for this tremendous opportunity.
Well, what a wonderful show. With that, we're going to say God bless you all and us all. And thank you. We know that. Go ahead, Dr. B.
I just got one more thing I wanted to say. People will get to hear Naomi again because we have a Marua Moms program. And the program is for pregnant moms who want a better life. You can be dealing with mental health issues of any sort or chemical health challenges. And the program will start on September the 9th, and it will go through October the 28th for 8 weeks at 10 to 12 on Saturdays at UROC. We will have at the end of the program, these pregnant moms come. We will have a huge community baby shower. Last time we had it, women walked away with almost $700 worth of gifts and cash. Wonderful. So not just that, but giving you a sense of community. So we want to invite people to join us for Marua Moms. They can register for it by calling 763-522-0100. It is definitely in the newspaper at our Insight News. It's featured. You can find out where to register for the program there. But you will hear Sister Naomi come back to teach one of those classes, one of those weeks. So thank you, Brother Al. And thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Healing Circle, the Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.